So I feel like I need to put a massive disclaimer at the beginning of this respective video. And I don't usually put disclaimers like this on my videos in terms of things, because I assume that people are going to keep it classy, keep it cool, you know, in terms of reacting to critical reviews and the like in terms of things. But I feel like I need to essentially put a disclaimer on this one. And because I know how the internet is and I know how people react to this respective series. The following review is an entry into the Legendborn series. I start with the first book, Legendborn, followed by the second book, which is Bloodmarked, as you can see here. And then the latter one is Oathbound, which is this big, this very big third book in the series. I'm probably not going to have to say much for the respective video, and I'll probably just edit this one out in successive videos, because I plan on putting this same disclaimer on each video just to update people. The main thing that I will say is keep it classy, y'all. People like things that you do not like. People don't like things that you like. And I think it's worth saying that, you know, we all come into different things, have different experiences with different books, and it's valuable to be able to see how things are and be able to critique them in a way that makes people better informed in terms of the things that they're picking up. And we all have different experiences that inform our worldview and the like. I think that's the sum of it in terms of things, but it's probably not going to be as much of an issue for the first book, which is Legendborn. But I definitely expect, since this is part of a series of reviews for the Legendborn series up to Oathbound, which will be the last book that I pick up in this respective series, I think this disclaimer is warranted, because it's definitely going to get a lot heated from here. So just letting y'all know ahead of time. But I think Legendborn is probably going to be the more positive of the reviews in terms of things. And then when we get to Bloodmarked and Oathbound, then y'all will know where I stand in terms of why I'm not continuing the series. But we'll leave it there. Disclaimer, keep it classy. That's all I ask. And I do check the comment section in terms of things. I haven't had to moderate too much in terms of inflammatory comments on my channel at all since the time that I've been on BookTube. So hopefully I can keep it that way, because so many of you are awesome anyway. But I just hope that that stays, because I'm going to have some very interesting opinions, and probably not in the popular sort for this respective series. So just putting it out there. Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be the first in a series of reviews for Tracy Deonn's Legendborn Cycle series, and I'm starting with the very first book in the series, which is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. As you can see, this is the cover right here for your reference. I'm not going to hold this up the whole entire video, so when I'm talking about it, you'll be able to see the image up here for your reference in terms of things when I'm talking in extended sections about the book. I don't anticipate having to read any particular passages for this respective book, because this was a reread for me. I first read this back in 2021, about a few months after my dad passed away. So it was reading it and leaving a placeholder review on Goodreads, but I just was not in the mindset to be able to write a full review of this, because basically still was dealing with my dad's death at the time in terms of things. So I was like, okay, I need to have a proper headspace to be able to address this series in terms of things, because I can definitely say that I related a lot to this first book in the series because of the grief aspect. So that will be something that I'll talk about more in later terms for this respective review, but we're going to get into kind of just a brief summation in terms of what happens in this book, and also my overarching thoughts. I don't think I'm going to have very many spoilers in this one. I think it's probably just going to be general review. If there's anything in terms of massive spoilers for this respective book, I will put a timestamp up and let y'all know, to say, hey, this is spoiler territory, just letting y'all know, and then put the timestamps up and also section it off in terms of the chapters. So y'all will know in terms of how this review will go. But I'm going to be doing a series of reviews for the Legendborn series. This is the first video of 3. I don't know if I'm going to upload them on the same day or on separate days, but I'm trying to kind of streamline this the best way I can, because I did a massive reading marathon on this respective series in the month of March. It is now April. I'm done with my blog review as well as my Goodreads review. I may link them in the description down below if you're interested in being able to read the written reviews. But we're just going to dive in, and I hope you enjoy, get something out of it. Grab yourself a favorite beverage or a snack or something, and let's get it settled in and go ahead and begin. So to tell y'all up front in terms of what attracted me to picking up the Legendborn series in the first place, was a combination of a lot of different things. First of all, respective video on urban fantasy and why Legendborn is considered to be 100%, 110%, 120% urban fantasy should be already uploaded by the time this video goes up. And you can see that video in the cards above in the description down below. But I am a massive, massive, massive urban fantasy fan. So when I learned that Legendborn was a Black girl-led urban fantasy series in terms of peers describing it, I knew I wanted to read this. Another aspect in terms of things that attracted me to this respective series, I am an UNC alum. Matter of fact, I think I attended UNC probably around the time that Tracy Deonn did, probably by a couple of years. So I'm slightly older than she is, so I definitely know about the campus. I've been on and off UNC's campus for many, many years for various events and things like that. So definitely the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is definitely a second home to me in terms of a lot of different things. So I know the campus. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of alumni who are from there. So definitely that was another aspect of this that appealed to me, because of its central setting being the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's campus. So I definitely wanted to be able to see that represented in Texas. It's cool to be able to see places that you know, places that you recognize in fiction, like whether it's something that is based on a true story or something like this where it's an urban fantasy where fantasy meets the familiar. I definitely wanted to pick this series up for myself to be able to experience it from the beginning to end and see what it had to say and showcase in Bree Matthews' respective story. And also the other aspect of it was being able to dig a little bit more into the King Arthur lore, which that's something that I'm definitely interested in for a lot of different reasons. One of my favorite adaptations, or actually a couple of my favorite adaptations, are King Arthur retellings. I love the Disney movie The Sword and Stone, which is based off the very first book in the Once and Future King, a book by T.H. White, I believe is the author. I'll put the cover up for your reference, but it's been a while since I've read Once and Future King. I read it back when I was in high school, and it was part of my in-school reading for an AP class, so I definitely remember reading that. I loved the first part of that book. Everything else kind of just dropped off for me for there, but I did read the whole book. And I was really fascinated in terms of being able to see young Arthur in terms of him kind of adjusting to his destiny in terms of things. So that was something that was appealing. I also loved the series Merlin. Long time watcher of Merlin in terms of things. So that was another adaptation that I actually really liked in so many things. It's something that I do want to probably rewatch at some point, but I do remember when it was originally airing, Merlin was something that I frequently watched. So King Arthur adaptations, home campus of UNC Chapel Hill, North Carolina girl. so much urban fantasy themed. Black Girl led, there were so many different things and where I was like, okay, give me this book. Let me experience it for what it offers and just go ahead and dive in. So basically, I definitely wanted to be able to experience this series for myself. And I was glad to be able to pick up Legendborn when I did. I just wish that I had been able to finish it in better circumstances in terms of things, because it did take me a while because I was dealing with a lot at the time. But I'm glad that in 2025 I was able to revisit this first book and re-experience it from the beginning for myself in terms of this readathon. So you'll be able to see my connections, you'll be able to see my reactions to this respective series in terms of things as you see this review. My overarching opinion on Legendborn is the fact that in my second read, I think a lot of pieces of the story did stick the landing with me through a second read through. Finishing it in 2021 and then coming back to it in 2025, I felt like that this book was a strong, if a bit flawed, beginning to an urban fantasy series, but with a lot of potential behind it in terms of things. Though I think upon a second reading, there were definitely aspects of this that stood out to me as kind of being odd or needing improvement. I'll talk about those as we go through events for this respective series, but I think overall, like, I had a pretty solid opinion on Legendborn, which is the first book in the Legendborn Cycle series. I gave this overall 4 stars, pretty strong 4 stars as well. I remember back in 2021, I couldn't decide whether or not it deserved either 4 stars or 4.5 stars. I kept going back and forth in terms of things. I'm like, I need the headspace to kind of like figure out, okay, did this land with me as much as I thought it did? Because I've definitely changed my opinion on several books before in terms of things where I loved them, and then upon second reading, like it didn't land as with me as well. But I think for the most part, Legendborn, upon second reading, it had a lot of strong points which still stuck the landing with me in my second read through, but I definitely picked up on a lot of issues that I didn't in my first reading, and we'll talk about those in this respective review once I kind of give a summary of what this book is about and what it entails. So Legendborn starts off with the respective narration of 16-year-old Bree Matthews, who is a girl who has applied to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill as an early college student. Now, before I go too much deeper, UNC Chapel Hill does not have a distinct early college program. It differs a little bit, like in terms of other early college programs for other universities across the state. In terms of things, a lot of people don't really know that. In terms of things, I know UNC Wilmington, among a number of other campuses across North Carolina, have early college programs and different things, but for UNC Chapel Hill, that's not the case. But with respect to how this novel starts off, it presumes that Bree is applying for early college, gets accepted into UNC Chapel Hill against her mother's wishes, who was also and her mother. Bree's mother was also an alumna of UNC Chapel Hill, but she is vehemently opposed to Bree going for reasons that are not immediately clear. And of course, that Bree and her mom have a pretty strong disagreement on that note. But starting off with the events of the prologue, and this is not a spoiler in any respect, this is literally where the novel begins, and it begins on a pretty traumatizing note. Bree loses her mom during a devastating and unexpected car accident, which takes her life and leaves Bree and her father, Edwin, devastated in terms of things, and reeling from the sudden loss in terms of things. And I remember going into that and just definitely feeling for Bree, because in terms of things, I've actually lost both of my parents. I know what losing a parent feels like, and especially like in the sense of losing a parent so suddenly that your world gets rocked. I get it. I get it in terms of things, and I know that actually hit home with me even from the very get-go in terms of how that impacted Bree and what she talks about and how she feels in terms of the aftermath of it. But you start off with Bree, you know, like just really just being shaken by this event in terms of things and having so many questions and so many regrets in terms of where this story starts off, and I'm feeling pretty like intense about it's an intense scene, and it's a pretty heartbreaking scene as well. Fast forward to when Bree some months later enters UNC Chapel Hill as a student, and she is at a party, her first night on campus, 20 miles off the campus of UNC. She's with a gathering with other students. Some of them are going cliff diving in terms of things, and basically like doing a bunch of things. Bree is with her best friend Alice Chen, who is also her roommate and fellow student at UNC Chapel Hill. So they are roommates, and they are going to this early college program together. But as Alice splits off with her, Bree considers going cliff diving and then ends up meeting a boy who's more than a little bit suspicious in terms of things. And it's a pretty iconic meeting because the character that she meets ends up being a lot in the following novels of this respective series. Yes, I'm talking about none other than Selwyn Kane. So Selwyn is... presumably he's about 17, 18 years old in terms of things. He's a little bit older than Bree, but still a teenager. And he basically warns her for not going cliff diving in terms of things, like, you know, and they have a pretty contentious first meeting in terms of things. Like, he doesn't treat her well even from the get-go for things. And I knew that there was probably going to be an antagonistic relationship between these two from the very get-go in terms of things. But that if it was just the awkward encounter for things that was the only part of their meeting, then that it wouldn't be an issue. But Bree witnesses something that she never expects in terms of being in the company of another student, and is wondering what in the world is going on. She essentially, this is an event of magic in terms of a creature that's flying around that Selwyn can see, and presumably like he doesn't know that she can see things in terms of stuff, but the series of events like has like multiple students like being involved in terms of witnessing certain altercations and things like that, in addition to this magic event in terms of entity that's flying around, and Bree seems to be the only one who can see it other than Selwyn. But in terms of Selwyn not wanting Bree to follow him, he mesmers her and another student. Mesmer being he basically like wipes part of her memory and compels her to walk away from the event that is happening so she doesn't follow him. But Bree somehow is able to break free of the magic hold that Selwyn spell has on her, and the mesmer doesn't hold. And so essentially she ends up following him anyway, witnessing a number of different events in terms of a fight that breaks out, and Selwyn and another group that's with him essentially taking down this respective creature. And Bree has so many questions, and understandably so in terms of what happens in the very first part of Legendborn. Things come to a head in terms of things. Bree ends up making her way back to Alice, and the two of them get into a heap of trouble, not even their first night on campus. So as they're essentially escorted away from that part of the off-campus party and everything falling out, like Bree and Alice are definitely in heaps of trouble. The officer that is driving them back to campus ends up coming across Selwyn and some of the other folks, and Bree has to kind of pretend like she doesn't recognize them in terms of things, and she's like, what in the world is going on? which is relatable, in terms of everything like being new to her for things. The day after, Bree and Alice have to go see the dean, and he basically comes down on both of them. Alice is not happy with Bree for various things in terms of stuff, and that causes a pretty strong rift between the two of them for things. But essentially, Alice is let go with a warning with respect to the dean, but when it comes to Bree, he basically like has her coming down with a little bit more harsher punishment, and that involves assigning her a mentor, a student mentor that is supposed to help guide her in terms of things, which we end up meeting Nick, who is one of the other major students who is part of the early college program, and also the person who ends up being Bree's mentor, which is interesting to be able to see in terms of the unfurling of events here. But you get some of the major characters from the get-go when Legendborn starts, and it starts with massive questions in terms of Bree wondering, what in the world did I just witness? What is this kind of magic? Did this guy try to wipe my memory and somehow I was able to fight against it? So she definitely starts the novel in place with a lot of interesting and intriguing questions. I did have to suspend my disbelief a little bit on one aspect of Bree meeting Nick in terms of him being her mentor for things, because it's presumed that the dean gave information about Bree's schedule, among other things, to Nick before Bree and him had a chance to formally meet, which I think is not necessarily realistic in terms of things. I think it was explained away, essentially, like in terms of some kind of waiver or agreement, and I'm like, you can't do that with underage students in terms of things. That's not how that works. That's not how confidentiality works on any kind of college program for minors. Regardless of things in terms of things, you can't violate their confidentiality. It's a student type thing. So I definitely had issues with that, especially considering Nick is able to figure out what dorm she's staying in, what her class schedule is, and stuff like that. I'm like, nah, you can't disclose that unless the student gives permission for that particular kind of thing. So that was something that I had to suspend my disbelief on and just keep reading past it. But I was like, yeah, like I didn't buy that in the novel, but I said, I'm just going to keep on going. And it's a minor nitpick in a lot of other different things that happened in this novel. But that was definitely something that I flat out was like, nah, that doesn't work. But eventually Nick does end up meeting Bree at her dorm with respect to Old West and connecting with her, and they share some interesting bonding moments in terms of things, and are able to talk. But then on the way back to the dorm, Bree is cornered in terms of an attack that happens with one of the magic creatures that she is able to see, and Nick doesn't realize that she's able to see that thing, and a harrowing event happens, and it ends up that Nick has to end up helping Bree, like in the aftermath of that harrowing event in terms of things. And then she realizes that Nick knows more than meets the eye when it comes to some of the magical events and weird things that are happening around UNC's campus in terms of things, and that she's able to see things that nobody else can see, and it kind of like has a tie-in to the Legendborn that Nick is essentially like familiar with and stuff like that. So she tries to pretend like she knows certain things that that he isn't aware that she knows, and in terms of the connection between them, trying to piece out different like details in terms of what's going on, why she can see certain things, what the secret group like in terms of things, what his connection to Selwyn Kane is, and the like. And it ends up being a very interesting encounter for the two of them in terms of things, especially when Cell decides to show up later in terms of things. But it was an interesting first meeting to be able to see the union of these characters and essentially get to know what the stakes are with respect to this secret order, what the Legendborn are, what things are in terms of Bree learning all of this respective stuff. And then the other aspect of it is that Bree learns that her mother may have known a lot more and was trying to was keeping secrets of her own in terms of being a student at UNC and being witnessing certain things. And Bree wants to know in terms of things what her mother knew and if something had a part in her death, and also in terms of things why she's able to resist the mesmer that is put upon her in terms of things when Selwyn tries to wipe her memory a second time and it doesn't take, and things and she's still able to perceive certain things and do certain things with respect to knowing about the Legendborn and these events happening on UNC's campus. Bree ends up doing is actually finding the connection of Nick and Selwyn to the secret order on the campus of UNC. So she puts upon herself to make herself a member of this order and essentially insert herself in terms of Nick's circles to wonder what happened to her mother, what things, why she can see certain things, and being able to learn more about the Legendborn and things like that. So she joins this group that both Elle and Nick are a part of, and she learns about the King Arthur connection in terms of things. She ends up declaring herself as wanting to pledge for the respective group and becoming a page under Nick's wing, and Nick is reluctant to be even come back to this group in terms of things. It is showcase that he has stepped away from his particular duties with that group and his destiny, and essentially with Bree coming back into the picture, Nick is basically like facing his destiny in terms of what people's expectations are with him serving in this respective role in terms of things. And you learn that that Nick is the presumed scion of Arthur, among other scions, among other representatives of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, in terms of things, and being able to make these pledges and being able to essentially be able to navigate the magic that they have and doing certain things and being tested among this group to see if they're worthy of being a part of this respective group. And Bree is basically a fish out of water in this respective group because she doesn't know much about her respective role or magic, as she comes to learn that she has magic to begin with, and in terms of being able to see the hellhounds and other creatures and being able to have magic that she just does not understand, but her magic reacts when she is in incidents of peril where her life is in danger in terms of things. And she wants to learn more about her magic. She wants to learn more about her mother in terms of things. And essentially Bree, alongside Nick and Selwyn, being a part of this respective group and basically fighting the pledge to be a part of this secret group, which is very male, very white, and Bree stands out as basically the only black girl, and essentially looks very different from all these different pledges. that are a part of this respective group, and she seeks to infiltrate it and get down to the bottom of what's going on in terms of things and being able to learn more about what's going on. So that is a very generous summary of the start to Legendborn and what transpires from there without getting into very many spoilers. I will say that this was a lot to unpack in terms of things, and I did love the attention to detail, the action scenes, the attention to setting, especially since I recognize so many different campus locations in terms of how they were described on the campus of University of North Carolina Chapel. You can tell that there are definitely spaces where Deonn was writing about things that were attentive to detail in terms of where things were located, like in terms of giving you a vivid sense of place within the campus, among the campus of the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, and showcasing where Bree is trying to acclimate in terms of things. I wouldn't say that this paid particular attention to her attending classes, but she did at least attend classes in this respective book. I will say that she was a student, but then there were a lot of things in terms of things that were happening aside from her going to classes, in terms of her learning about the Legendborn and basically the science author and navigating like her magic and being a pledge of this respective secret society on campus that she had to adjust to in terms of things, and essentially trying to answer a lot of different questions about her respective identity and being able to see what is going on. I think something else that actually appealed to me in terms of the respective details of the magic and the root craft system and Bree learning about all of that was interesting to be able to see the level of detail that was provided in this respective narrative. I will say that I wasn't necessarily a fan of how Bree ends up learning about that in terms of things, because she is still dealing with a lot of grief associated with the loss of her mother. You see spaces in terms of where she's interacting with her dad in terms of things, even though he kind of keeps his distance and says, I hope you make good choices, interact with other Black kids on campus and things like that. Like he checks in with her, and he basically tells her, you do need to deal with some of the grief that you're going through in terms of things. And so Bree ends up finding a therapist who used to know Bree's mom, and Edwin, Bree's father, thinks that may help her in terms of things. But then Bree starts learning a lot more about her mom, about root crafting, about other things in terms of these interactions, in terms of her history and what is lends her to basically what her mother's experience on campus were, and what secret she was keeping that Bree had no idea about in terms of things. And in some ways, some of it is fascinating to be able to see the magic and being able to learn that respective history. But the other part of it is navigating Bree's respective grief, and then also some of the very heavy hitting revelations that she has from learning about from learning about her mother's history, her respective ability, and things like that from her mother's friends. So it's a lot. It's overwhelming. You can understand that a 16-year-old girl is going to be overwhelmed with a lot of these different revelations being handed down. So at least I found that realistic in terms of what Bree was grappling with in terms of the grief aspect and the her and the magical aspects. I don't know if I really loved that some of the pieces of trauma and dealing with therapy sessions and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily the kind of therapy that I think a 16-year-old girl needs to be able to deal with some of that grief and pain. And Bree definitely, from her reactions to a lot of different things, she needed definitely more than just the guidance of her respective therapist, who was her mother's friend, and you learn about like a couple of things in terms of where her therapist kind of steps aside and says, hey, like, I'm not the person for you in terms of stuff, because I thought being able to talk about this would help you, but it's not something that I can take on, and I told your father this. I think some of that could have been better handled in terms of things, but I do think it, with respect to the craft building, the root building, the roof crafting, the magic in terms, and also the insight to the personal history in terms of Brie, the connection to her mother and certain things. I thought that was interesting to be able to see play out, at least in terms of setting up where this series was going to go. It had me intrigued in terms of how it would take it. I think in terms of starting where my critique of this series, this particular book, maybe in terms of how some of the racial trauma landed with respect to this series. And I know there are going to be people who say that they thought that this was handled very well. I'll be inclined to disagree in terms of that, because I feel like how this is handled within the book, it like has like some of it sticks landing and some of it doesn't, especially with what it chooses to include and what it chooses to exclude in terms of things. With respect to the history of societies, monuments, and events that actually happened in UNC Chapel Hill in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I think that was accurate, particularly for the backdrop in terms of because you can tell the pieces where that was actually research, and like some of the controversies and things like that, including the mention of Silent Sam in terms of that if you know about the monument, where there's some of the pieces on campus in terms of commemorative of things where the university was built and how it was built and that kind of thing. It is accurate, but it feels like, and I know so many other reviewers have said this before in terms of things, it felt like Brie was really one of the few Black characters on campus in terms of things, and it was there were many questions in terms of where the other Black characters were on UNC's campus, even with being a PWI, a primary white institution. And I am inclined to agree, because even when I was a student at UNC Chapel Hill, during the time that I went as an undergrad, I was able to have a very diverse friend group in terms of things. My friend group included other Black students, it included Asian students, it included Latinx students, even Native students who were attending the institution at the time. And the Native population on UNC is small, but there's still a community in terms of things. In other words, you were still able to find your people who are like you in terms of things, even with respective identity, even with it being a PWI. And the other aspect of it that didn't feel like it was accurately represented was the fact that one of the biggest student groups at UNC's campus is the BSU, the Black Student Union. So and even as an undergrad, and even before I came to UNC as a student, I remember the number of initiatives and the number of different things that I was recruited under in terms of things. I originally came to UNC's campus as a part of a couple of things in terms of being a high school student. I was invited under Project Uplift, which is intended for Black students in terms of things, to be able to give an idea of what campus life is like in terms of things. And you go to several sessions, you do different things on campus, you stay in a dorm, you stay with another Black student, you're able to find community and connect with different people. I saw several people at Project Uplift that I recognized from my high school, and if I can put up a picture of what I looked like when I was 15, 16 years old. I think I was 16 years old in this respective photo. I will put it up here for your reference. But it isn't like the Black community doesn't have a presence on UNC Chapel Hill's campus in terms of things. So there was a lot of things where it was like, you know, where are the other black students in terms of things? And you would think statistically, Bree would have found another black friend or somebody else other than the upperclassman that she meets, who is Mariah. Mariah gets the early introduction in this, and then also Bree's therapist, who knew her mom. But I know that in terms of things, there were things as a high school student. The second event that I went to was High School Honors Day, which honored students who were part of the top 11% who were of marginalized groups to UNC's campus to be able to participate in campus events in terms of things. So they were recruiting us in terms of things and saying, like, you know, hey, even if you don't choose our campus to come to, like, you know, we want to be able to showcase why UNC is a fit for you in terms of things, help you feel welcome, see what's a part of the campus community and things that you can do and that kind of thing. And it was a welcoming environment in terms of me being able to have that experience with other students who were my age in terms of things. So there are definitely initiatives and different social groups and other things that help marginalized students get acclimated to UNC's campus. So the fact that there was nothing like that in Legendborn was definitely something that was interesting. And I'm like, yeah, I think it didn't provide a very accurate representation of a lot of these different things. I understand the intent with showcasing Bree as a student who is in this primarily white social group, and with the powers that she has and with the identity that she has, trying to be a part of the social group and stuff like that. But it felt like there could have been more in terms of Bree's friend group and other acclamations that had her socializing with more diverse with a greater diverse group and being able to see other black students in terms of things. And I know that there are other students of other marginalized communities that are represented. Alice is one of them, Alice Chen, who is her best friend from her small town. And also there are various students who identify as LGBTQ, which I thought the LGBTQ representation in Legendborn was solid. Like, in terms of the stuff, I was like, don't change the thing. That's great. Like, I'm glad to be able to see students who identify as different identities in that regard. But it just felt like there could have been more in terms of the socialization aspect, in terms of things, and it could have been more realistic in terms of how it was portrayed. And that is a minor critique. That is a minor critique in terms of things for the respective overarching story. But I understood the intention behind it, but I think the execution of it wasn't realistic if you kind of break it down from certain things in terms of who's put on page and who isn't. And I think that could have been improved in this novel. Now, in terms of the characters, I thought the vast majority of the characters that were drawn in Legendborn were strongly asserted in terms of things. I had mixed opinions about how some of them came across, and it's a large cast, but you're able to keep up with all the characters with respect to their respective roles and their respective identities and things like that through the respective narrative. Bree herself, it's hard to be able to get to know her past her grief, though I understand, considering all the things that she is dealing with in terms of things like she's in a position of grief and pain from the loss of her mother, and also essentially trying to get down to the nitty gritty in terms of what her abilities are, what happened to her mother, all these different questions that she's asking, and the harrowing situations that she goes through. In terms of this novel, I could forgive not knowing more about Bree to start with in terms of things because of everything that she is going through. But I had made a note even in my initial reading and like in the subsequent reading that I'm like, okay, I want to know more about Bree's personality in terms of what she loves, what she doesn't love in terms of things, and being able to see this more wider picture of her in terms of things. Though I think one of the strongest aspects in terms of Legendborn as an overarching narrative is centering Bree, centering her grief, and seeing the ways that she navigates that grief in terms of things. And you can tell that her investment in learning, trying to find out the truth in terms about the secret society, what her abilities are, and what her mother's role was in on that sort of thing, that's a personal mission for her. And she dives right in without any kind of filter in terms of things. She wants to get to the bottom of it, and it's a personal experience for her, and she's like invested in this the whole way through. Nick, I think, as a overarching character to start with, he is a strongly drawn character, and you can tell his reluctance to be able to get back into this secret society and essentially embracing this role because of Bree in terms of things. He does the best that he can in terms of his respective role, and trying to embrace that, though it comes with a lot of complications, and you can definitely understand like where the complications of that lie in terms of things. And then with respect to his relationship with Bree, like he treats her well. I will say that he respects her in terms of things, and you can definitely see the rapport between them as events happen over the course of the novel in terms of things. But there are definitely some aspects about his identity that really, like, I don't want to get into it because it's spoiler territory, and we might have to talk about that more in Blood Mart. But there's definitely some revelations that make it things way more complicated in terms of being part of the Scions of Arthur, in terms of things and things that are going on, and Scions of the other Knights of the Round Table as well, that make things very, very complicated. Let's just say it like that. Selwyn Kane, of course, Selwyn Kane. I think I said this even before to a degree in my first reading, and it didn't change this time around. I do not like Selwyn Kane. You will not see me be a Selwyn fangirly anytime at all in terms of things. And, you know, like, considering, you know, his character inspiration in terms of him being directly inspired by Damon from the Vampire Diaries, that is not surprising in terms of, like, you know, why, like, you know, like, I have certain feelings about that character. But it's also the fact that Selwyn does not treat Bree very well in this novel at all. He even threatens to kill her several times, and basically is just completely ruthless to her in many different occasions, even from the very first moment that they meet to even to certain things that happen towards the end of the novel where, you know, like, things are a bit more complicated and they're trying to figure out the truth of certain things. But the way that Selwyn treats Bree is just not okay, to say the least. I'm greatly understating that fact. Like, nobody should be treated like the way, like, no person should be treated in the way that Selwyn treats Bree, like, in terms of anything, and that should have had a better way of like being called out in terms of things and pushback. There's some pushback in this respective novel in terms of things, but not to the extent where it was like, yeah, nah, I can't get behind this character in terms of what he does to Bree in terms of things. I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be a Selwyn fangirly at all. But there is an antagonistic relationship between Selwyn and Bree that's very early established on, but there are moments of connection in terms of things where they're trying to navigate certain pieces in terms of their shared history, as well as the the relationship that Bree has with Nick in terms of associations and things like that, and his association as a his respective identity with respect to his role that he plays in terms of protecting Nick. So yeah, that there's that connection in terms of things. There were other characters that I actually did like through the narrative as well. Will was definitely a great character to be able to get to know as the healer in terms of things, checking in with Bree, especially with a lot of different things that happened with her. Like, I liked Will's character to start with in terms of this. So like, I knew he would be a character that I would check for in the respective pursuit of the series, as well as Mariah, who didn't have a big role in this respective novel, but she's definitely there, but her role isn't as pronounced as it probably could have been, and could have even been more expanded than what it was, even with being an upperclassman, but and her respective abilities, but I know that Mariah plays a bigger role as the series goes on. So being introduced to her character here, I liked her, but we just really didn't see enough of her in terms of things, and I was like, okay, maybe we'll have opportunities to be able to see her more in the respective series. As far as the respective rolling action and I think the action scenes in this were great in terms of how they were paced, especially in terms of some harrowing scenes in terms of Bree fighting for her life and grappling with the power that she has but doesn't understand. I think the encounters with the foxes and the hellhounds and in terms of the trials that happen, unexpected events, those were paced and explained very, very well in terms of pacing, in terms of things. So that had me, in terms of the urban fantasy aspect, in terms of the action sequences and the fights and things like that, that was done solid. So I can't take that away from this respective novel in terms of that piece of it for things. So I did like that aspect of it. But again, when it came to some of the racial tensions, some of the ways in terms of that being explained and essentially revealed, I think that's where the novel struggled a bit. And I think some of that, I understood the intention behind it, but the execution of it in terms of things relied on a lot of contradictions of facts, as well, a lot of things that were essentially played up in these isolated environments in terms of things where there wasn't a lot of opportunities for pushback, not just from Bree, but from other people around Bree in terms of things. I think that could have been handled better, but yeah, I think there were definitely flaws in terms of how it chose to execute some of its heavier themes in terms of showcasing this good old boy network in terms of the environments that Bree was in, and certain revelations that are handed down in terms of Bree's identity and role, and essentially what she is revealed to be towards the end of the novel. I think the heavier hitting pieces with me that actually stuck the landing were the pieces of grief that Bree deals with, the loss of her mother and trying to find answers in terms of that and grappling with her power. But it was also some of the action scenes and the very real threat to Bree's life in terms of things and what she's able to survive along with her the group that she's with, and navigating all of that. I think those were where the novel stuck the landing the most, and also the world building in terms of learning about the different scions and the different aspects of where it related to King Arthur. I think those pieces were strong, had a strong foundation in terms of where it could potentially go in terms of things, and being able to build upon those aspects. I think that's about it that I want to be able to expand upon with respect to my review of Legendborn by Tracy Deonn for this first book in a YA urban fantasy series, a Black girl-led urban fantasy series even with some of its flaws, it managed to be an enthralling experience. I would not say that this is a cozy start to a series or anything like that. Like a lot of people, and I'm just going to be honest in terms of what to expect with Legendborn. There are a lot of heavy moments, and it doesn't really let up with the heavy moments with respect to even the start of this urban fantasy series. And I kind of expected that going in terms of things, because urban fantasy series tend to be a little bit more on the darker side in terms of things and explore a lot of heavier themes. So that did not surprise me. I knew going in that this was going to be a tale of grief, and it is a strong tale of grief in terms of Bree Matthews navigating the loss of her mom and essentially having to grapple with a lot of powers that she doesn't understand, and answering a lot of questions in terms about why she is able to see these different terrifying creatures, what her role with respect to things is, what her magic comes to, like in terms of coming into her magic, how to navigate that and why it chooses to show up when it does, essentially for things, and then having to and then making the choice to infiltrate this respective order to be able to try to find answers about her mom, as well as try to see, you know, like in terms of like grappling like what comes next. And towards the end of the novel, there are definitely some heavy encounters which make it clear that this is very tragic, very, very heavy hitting in terms of major battles and major losses and revelations that Bree and the rest of the group have to contend with in the next novel, which is Bloodmarked. But I think where this respective series started had a lot of potential to be able to grow and being able to see. And I think in certain spaces, in terms of where it sticks the landing, the attention to place, the attention to the world building, the attention to Bree navigating all of these different pieces, navigating certain pieces of her relationships in terms of meeting the other characters, coming to terms with other people who knew her mother in terms of things, and like learning about root crafting and things like that. There were a lot of interesting moving pieces of Legendborn where I was like, okay, I definitely want to continue this series. There are caveats to it, but I definitely want to see where this goes. And so I gave this book a strong 4-star rating, albeit with some of those caveats in terms of things. I wanted to see where it went. As far as the romance aspect of that, I didn't really pay that much attention to it, because I didn't think, I think there were definitely moments where you could tell romance was a focus in terms of things, but like, was it really necessary? I don't think so. Was a love triangle, was well, I'm not going to get into the love triangle. The love triangle, it gets more strongly established as the series goes on, but for this first book, it was just basically like establishing everything from the beginning. And I thought that like that wasn't like a piece that I paid that much attention to in terms of things, and it wasn't the main draw for me. The main draw for me was Bree getting to know this world, getting to know the campus of UNC Chapel Hill, being able to navigate that, navigate her relationships, figure out what was going on in terms of what happened with her mother, like what her connection, what secrets her mother was keeping and why, and essentially navigating her role in the secret society and what her identity ends up being by the end of the novel in terms of who she's identified as. And essentially like a major spoiler that I'm tap dancing around like towards the end of the book, that I may go into more detail when I do my review on Bloodmarked. But for first novel, in terms of the start to this respective series, I gave this a strong 4 out of 5 stars. And it made me want to continue the book to see where it went and how it would develop certain things and even resolve some of the caveats that were with it. So that was my review of Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, 4 out of 5 stars. we're going to leave it there. And essentially, like, I am going to be filming other videos following this one to continue my review of my mass reading of the Legendborn Cycle series by Tracy Deonn in 2025. So that is my review. That is my video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.